Welcome to another edition of the official Catchup podcast. It's myself, Ben, and I'm joined by Chris, as always, and Mozza, returning from Hat Convention Monthly. He's here and he's back. How you doing, gentlemen?
I actually forgot about that last week, Mozza, that we were kind of slagging you off. And he has his logo on his hat today.
It's the hat and the twat and the hat himself.
I was away getting head surgery to get another hat put on it.
You also give her two hats in the one go, innit? The important hats. Big hat convention down south, wasn't it, last week?
I've had my Wayne Rooney hair replacement surgery, so.
But we all good, gents, yeah? All ready to go.
Yeah, good. Interesting episode this week, obviously. Well, we spoke to Thomas Brown, obviously, so kind of probably best to react to that, I guess.
Yeah, firstly, it's a shout out to our sponsors, the Soccer Shop Direct. Find them on Twitter at the Soccer Shop D. Or check out their website, www.thesoccershopdirect.com, for all your teamwear and football equipment needs. Now, as I say, we're going to speak to Thomas Brown of Gala, Fairydean, Rovers. We'll have a chat with him about the recent SGM and the rule changes that were kind of put onto the clubs as of last night, which was Monday night for those maybe listening later in the week. But Chris, you want to just kick it off and we'll speak to Thomas just now.
Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of the official Catch-Up. Today we've got a special guest, Thomas Brown of Gala, Fairydean, Rovers, on with us. Obviously he's going to talk, we're going to talk about the special general meeting that was held on Monday, and obviously Thomas came on to discuss his reasons for resigning from the league board, and we'll just sort of take it from there, Thomas, if you're happy with that.
Yeah, that's fine. Happy to be here.
So obviously there's been a lot of sort of chat this week, Thomas, about, not only yourself resigning, but obviously Chris Ewan. We've kind of heard bits and bobs sort of from both sides. Do you want to sort of just go into the backstory of the boundary vote, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, I think the boundary vote is nothing new. I mean, it's been in front of the Lowland League clubs several times in the last few years. That vote had nothing to do with my resignation. That was just another vote that was coming to the clubs, and the proposal for that had come directly from the SFA with a set of new pyramidal playoff rules, which were to be agreed by all parties. That would be the SFA, SLFL, Highland League, and the SPFL. So that was a set of rules that were rewritten that came back to the clubs to consider voting on. Part of that rule did include removing the boundary, so that clubs in the SPFL2 would nominate a league they would go to, and that was voted on last night and was rejected by the clubs.
Yeah, because previously, I think this, well, from our knowledge anyway, this was kind of brought up before Brecon City were relegated to the Highland League, but I believe last time, along with the sort of obviously the Colts side's discussion. Obviously, it was rejected, I think, by at the time 17-member clubs. So it's good to obviously see because that it's been rejected again. Because, personal opinion, obviously, I'm against the boundary. I agree with the clubs on that instance as well. That I don't think the boundary rule should be changed for any club because, I mean, we're the Highland Lowland League. I think there would be sort of financial implications if, for example, we got a team in from the Highland League or vice versa. So it's good to hear that. I don't think there's been a lot of sort of press around it. I've not really seen anything today of the outcomes of any votes or anything like that. So, which is a wee bit disappointing given the press surrounding it last week. Obviously, with yourself and Chris resigning. You obviously mentioned the fact that your resignation was not really to do with the vote itself. Can you give us sort of the factors of why you resigned from the league board?
Yeah, certainly happy to discuss that. The Lowland League had its AGM at the end of May, 27th or 28th of May 2021. And at that, the clubs passed a whole of the rules which allowed guest clubs to come in. Now, obviously, guest clubs were referring to Rangers and Celtic B teams. So league rules had to be adjusted to allow that to happen. And the member clubs voted in favour by a majority to accept these rules. So that meant that Rangers and Celtic could play. However, league rules only become adopted once they've been approved by the SFA. They have to go to the Professional Game Board to be approved and then the SFA board before they're approved. So they're not actually in play until such time as they've been approved by the SFA. And so the league rules were submitted to the SFA for approval at the end of May. And as it stands today, my understanding is these rules have still not been approved by the SFA. So a few weeks ago, we were informed that they've still not been approved. So I thought, and not just me, there was a few people on the board at the time, felt it was appropriate that we should inform clubs. That there was then a discussion about whether we should inform clubs, do we inform clubs, do we not inform clubs. And then about a week after that, the Lowland League board received an email correspondence that confirmed that the rules had not been approved, and that correspondence to the board members also stated that they would not be approved until such time as the Lowland League confirmed its acceptance of the new pyramid playoff rules. It also confirmed that if the clubs did not agree to change the rules, they would cross that bridge when it came to it. So as a board member, it was very apparent to me that these two things had been linked, the playoff pyramid rules and the new rules. And for that reason, I made a proposal that we should inform clubs of the full circumstances before Monday's vote. And that was only to ensure that clubs were fully briefed and all the information available to them. And the board voted initially in majority to inform the clubs. And then there was a change of vote sometime later on, which resulted in not informing the clubs. So that decision to not inform the clubs of key information, in my opinion, as I says, already calls into the board's integrity into question.
It's actually interesting, Thomas, because I actually agree with you and Chris. Having been in our position, obviously we're aware of certain things, not everything. For the 5 things we know, there's probably 10 that we don't. But from my understanding, there was certainly a lot of clubs or a lot of people at clubs that weren't aware of this, and I agree with you on that point. I think they should have been made aware. I think there's a bit of a tendency, even through us, to maybe get sort of news out there or what's happening out there when it really should be the league, in my opinion. But I suppose you've got thoughts on this, Derek. What would you how would you react to that sort of thing as well?
I mean, the thing that I'm quite confused about is, like you mentioned there, Thomas, that initially the vote was in favour of informing the clubs, and then for whatever reason at a later date the vote changed. Do we know any reason why that happened? Because it just, I'm struggling to get my head around why the change of heart.
Yeah, there was something happened, and then about an hour later there was a change of heart. Whether what happened influenced that, I don't know. But certainly there was a change came in after there was a discussion with Ian Maxwell after the decision to inform the clubs.
And just to clarify for anyone that isn't aware of like you've explained it really well already with the rules and so on, essentially right now the league, it's almost as if it's playing under appeal and just waiting for these rules to be approved. So if they were not to be approved, would that mean that Rangers and Celtic B therefore wouldn't play any more games? Yeah,
it means we would revert back to League Rules version 15, which has no scope for guest clubs, in which case Celtic and Rangers would have to stop playing.
How much of a reality is that, to be honest? Because I think that was one of the things, before obviously speaking to yourself, Thomas, that I was kind of made aware. Obviously, there was a couple of articles about it and stuff like that. But is that something that could you imagine the uproar, for example, if all the backlash of the Colts coming into the league and then suddenly they're withdrawn? I just find that quite unbelievable that we're in that scenario, or if it would ever happen. I don't see it, basically.
Yeah, well, I think it's highly unlikely that the SFA would want to take on Rangers and Celtic.
Yeah.
So I think from that point of view, there's probably highly unlikely it would ever happen. However, there was a way for us to try and resolve this. I put a proposal to the board that we should inform the SFA 2 weeks ago now, almost 3 weeks ago, when we were made aware the rules hadn't been passed, that we should revert back to the old rules and stop Rangers and Celtic playing. And that would then ensure straight away Rangers and Celtic would be on to the SFA to get this resolved. That would mean that going into the special general meeting on Monday night, this issue would have already been resolved one way or another, either by Rangers and Celtic not playing the rules being approved or the rules being rejected, and that board did not kind of go with me in that proposal either.
What are your obviously, we don't want to obviously get too confidential or anything like that, but on your personal view, I mean, why do you think the SFA or whoever it has been has withheld these rules or withheld the rule changes?
I can only assume, based on the information I have, which is an email when it came to all the board members in official form, was that it was very clear in black and white that the rules would not be approved until the Lowland League confirmed acceptance of the new pyramid playoff rules. So people can take from that what they will. I took from that was being used as a stick to beat the Lowland League with. People may say it wasn't, but I think that's exactly what it was. Yeah.
I mean, we've spoken about the SFA sort of numerous times through this podcast and online. And one of I don't know what meeting it was. I think it was to do with the Colts coming in, but obviously I've heard of certain, SFA tactics, if you will, for a lack of a better term. Or for me, the article that was released, I actually thought they were talking about a previous meeting because I'd heard similar things being said. Or I don't know if we're not wanting to accuse anyone of blackmail or coercion, but I do believe. I don't even want to call it a threat, but I do certainly believe that there is some sort of influence that they want to get in there. But a lot of the stuff I read about in the article was actually from something I heard in a previous meeting. So I'm not actually sure where obviously most of the stuff came from. I know you had your quote in there too, but do you think it's maybe an issue that's been going on for since May, and it's really just came to a head at the moment?
Well, I think Lowland League clubs voted on this just at the last AGM, which was only back in May, and it became apparent that even after the clubs voted no, there was then another request to try and accept Brecon. So I've no idea why there was so much pressure or so many people wanting Brecon come into the Lowland League when there's a clear boundary already to differentiate the Lowland and Highland.
Just in terms of the board, Tam, what do you see the sort of future of the board being? Obviously, we don't want to make sort of assumptions that that certain people will go or it will get changed or anything. But just from a personal point of view, what do you see happening?
Well, I think it would be unfair of me to speculate. But I think the decision of what happens with the board is a matter for the clubs.
Yep.
And I've had several clubs on the phone in the last 3 or 4 days to express their support and kind of dissatisfaction.
Yeah, it's just before you jump in, Mozza, just to repeat the point, I like what I said earlier, 100% agree that for whatever reason, I think the league could be a wee bit more transparent, certainly. And obviously, I've said that I think sometimes I wouldn't say used, but sometimes people come to us, and I think to myself, why aren't the league saying anything? So it can be frustrating even for us, not knowing and stuff like that. But yeah, you were going to jump in there, Derek, with something.
Yeah, the thing that's frustrating for me in the SFA side of things is we now have a full pyramid with those boundaries fully set with the new Midlands League, as far as I'm concerned. So I don't understand why they're continuing to try and remove this Highland-Lowland boundary when, in the scenario where, say, a Brecon were to enter the Lowland League, if they were to get relegated, they should go to the Midlands League, but there's no mechanism for that because they would be in the wrong region. So I genuinely don't understand what this determination that the League 2 has, or the SPFL as a whole have, to try and remove the set boundary. It makes sense in my head, but maybe, I don't know, maybe that's too simplistic a view that I've got. I genuinely thought we'd have solved this question by the full pyramid coming in this season, but clearly not.
Well, I think that question was raised last night, and the president of the SFA answered that quite well, and he gave examples where there is already leagues where people are playing an unusual kind of across boundaries, and he gave us a prime example, Berwick Rangers, for instance, playing in the Lowland. So, yeah, and in fairness to the SFA's position, they feel that currently clubs who get relegated out of SPFL 2, there is a boundary which defines where they go. In our league, it's set at the start of a season by agreement by the 4 leagues who decide where clubs will go when they're relegated. So in terms that does bring some parity to it, so that the SPFL have the same as what we have. I think the concern is though that if you end up removing the boundary, then you end up with 2 Tier 5 potentially national leagues. I know there was assurances given last night that that wouldn't happen. So if that wouldn't happen, just leave the boundary or adjust the boundary. But clubs obviously don't want it removed.
Is there a potential of finding a third way here that the SFA essentially want to have an arbitration process? So say if the boundary was to exist, but there was a possibility for a League 2 side to make a case that they would be better going into the other league for whatever reason, if there's extenuating circumstances or so on. Because as far as I can tell, the issue seems to be League 2 sides want to have that ability to say where they want to go if they get relegated.
Yeah, and I think again the point was made by the SFA reps at last night's meetings that we should be having adult discussions about these things and realistic discussions about where teams go. And I think that it seems to be that the Lowland League are always asked to adjust this. However, there's nothing in return for the Lowland League clubs. I would imagine if the SFA went away and come back with a kind of plan or a strategy that says that we want to remove the boundary, and in the course of the next 2 years we want the boundary removed, but that goes hand in hand with automatic promotion to SPFL, then I think we've got a place to start having proper adult discussions with the clubs and the SFA and other leagues to really progress that.
That would be some carrot, I would probably change my tune if because that's I think we've been discussing a lot of different scenarios with the Colts and having Brecon in the league previously, but that would always be the carrot for any non-league team, is that automatic promotion to League 2. I'd probably change my tune on that, but at the moment I don't agree with the changing the boundaries and deciding who goes where, because it's it's a bit disrespectful, not only to the Lowland League but obviously the Highland League, and I'm assuming they would have to agree something on under the same circumstances. I'm assuming so.
Yeah, I think that the Highland League have been very clear that they're quite happy with this to be the case, because it probably means that they've got again less chance of relegation because they have very little beneath them. So what then happens is that the more clubs that are able to come to the Lowland League means that the current membership increases its percentage chance of being relegated. Because if we have Forfar, Montrose, Elgin, whoever get said they can come to the Lowland League, if that happens, we have to relegate another team out the bottom of our league to accommodate them to stay at 16. So our members have got nothing to gain from that other than an increased chance of relegation. And as one other club last night pointed out, increased travel costs to travel wherever the game might be.
Yeah, it makes sense. I guess it does boil down to, instead of having a demand, having a proper negotiation, doesn't it? If there's something in return, let the talks happen. I totally get that. The only other thing is, now that we're in this situation and the vote was rejected, and from what we know is rejected pretty soundly as well, are the SFA going to force the hand and stop the B-sides playing, or it doesn't seem like the Lowland board as things stand is going to remove Celtic and Rangers by their own free will and force the issue that way. So what comes next, do you think, Thomas? I
think what comes next is that the SFA approve the rules and the league continues. One point I did make last night, after it was pointed out to us, that the Highland League have already agreed to the new pyramid playoff rules, as have the SPFL. The SPFL agreed to them pending the Lowland League's agreement. So with the Highland League having agreed them, we've now got 2 leagues in the pyramid with different rules for the playoff. Because we rejected theirs and Highland League accepted it.
So does that approval come in instantly? It's not based on everyone accepting before it comes into place?
The pyramid playoff can only be changed by the agreement of the 4 partners. If one part disagrees, it can't be changed. However, the Highland League have already agreed it, and from what we were told last night, they've already agreed that and put that in place. So when I asked the president that last night, I was told that would have to go back to the PGB for further discussion. because we've now got the Lowland with different set of playoff rules compared to the Highland.
So is it fair to say there's less concern about obviously the Colts being chucked out of the league, but more looking at the sort of playoff towards the end of the season, that our champion club, if you will, might not be involved?
Well, I don't think they'll not be involved. I think there'll be a champion club that will be put forward by the league. However, one of the concerns, and I've already raised this when I was a board member, that when it comes to the end of the season, if you are, given what's happened in the last 2 years trying to get a playoff with legal processes, if you're a team that's Club 42 in the SPFL and the Lowland League club wins the playoff against the Highland League, and you then dispute that they started the season with rules, playing with rules that were not adopted by the SFA, because not only is it a breach of the Lowland League rules, it's also a breach of the SFA articles. The SFA articles, again, confirm that rules only come into play once you've been approved by the SFA. So if you're Club 42, you put a legal challenge in to say, well, actually, we're going to get relegated, but this club played 10 games under rules that were not approved, and that was in breach of their own league rules and in breach of the SFA articles. Likewise, if you end up as Club 16 and facing relegation, you state that you shouldn't be relegated because you played a long part of the season without rules.
How sort of realistic would that be, though? Because obviously I think it was Brecon, excuse me if I was wrong, but obviously the SPFL kind of went to bat for them at the end of last season with the legal cases and stuff, and obviously it was kind of thrown out. So how realistic would the Club 42 have a chance against, I shouldn't really be asking you that, Thomas, because I know you're not a lawyer, but personal point of view, do you think they would have a chance of getting maybe a relegation or a playoff overturned?
I've no idea. That would all come down to some legal position at the time, somebody making a legal opinion on it. However, what is very clear, it doesn't matter how it's dressed up, that the articles of the SFA are very clear, that the rules have to be approved before the season starts. So I think that's could be a difficult position to defend later on.
Yeah, the concern I'd have with that is we've already started the season, so regardless if they're approved now, that could still come up at the end of the season, especially if one of the B-sides win the league technically, and it's, say, a second place champions club that's nominated for the playoff. It could open all sorts of cans of worms.
Yeah, well, I mean, the league rules are written in a way that it's up to the leagues to put forward their champion club.
Mm-hmm.
As long as the leagues follow a process to find a champion club, that's their champion. However, if legally somebody challenges the fact that the rules haven't been approved and the season started, then that could potentially be a problem down the line.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like a bit of a farce, to be quite honest. It just seems like it's kind of got to a point now where we're now debating whether or not that actually the league is going to be legally accepted at the end of the season and stuff like that, and that just concerns me. Obviously, my thoughts are that from a West perspective, we're looking to get teams promoted into the Lowland via the playoffs and things like that, and that could potentially have ramifications for West and East teams, and that's something that I'm massively concerned about. I think, given what we've seen before from teams who have went down the route of legal challenges, I think it's potentially got a bit more likelihood that could stick rather than before where it's kind of just chucked out, and that's pretty worrying from my perspective.
Could I actually ask one last thing, Thomas? Slightly different subject to do with the West. Has the subject of further relegation ever came up in board meetings over the last, say, 12 months or so?
Not that I'm aware of. And that's something which is a difficult one, because again, you get back to the scenario and analogy of kind of turkeys voting for Christmas, because that requires the Lowland League to change its rules. Mm-hmm. I think the number of teams that are sitting in tiers 6 and 7 below the Lowland, so that's East, West and South, with the number of clubs aiming to get into tier 5 from there, I think that there has to be a review of the pyramid to find out how, rework it, whether it's increasing the Lowland League footprint, increasing the Lowland League divisions, having, do we have a second division of the Lowland League, or do we have regional Lowland Leagues kind of as a second division feeding in with automatic promotion for the winners of the 3 leagues? So you could end up with a Lowland League Premier that has 3 relegated every season, and the 3 relegated come from the regional leagues. That could work. But again, I think that would all need to be further discussed. Because I think at the minute it's difficult to say we have a pyramid, because in the SPFL it's all automatic promotion for the champions. However, when we come out of the SPFL to Tier 6, to Tier 5, she then got to win the playoff against the SPFL club, and then below Tier 5, it's automatic promotion after the playoff. So even if we could initially get everybody to sign up to an agreement, the West, all the leagues, SFA, SPFL, Highland League, with the principle that champions should be automatically promoted, I think would be a starting place.
Yeah, fully behind that, I think.
Thomas, obviously we've kind of been on a serious chat today, but how are you enjoying Gala Fairydean Rovers since you made the move?
Yeah, it's different. It's obviously I don't stay in Gala. It's a different club altogether. But yeah, certainly enjoying it, and hopefully we'll do well in the league this season.
Yeah, one of the sort of thoughts that we've discussed about Gala is if they would do as well as they did last season, but some decent results actually recently. Obviously, we want to wish everyone down at Gala all the best. Having the game called off at the weekend due to an outbreak of COVID and that. Hopefully, all the affected staff and players, and I'm not sure about yourself, Thomas, but hopefully if anyone's affected, we wish them all the best in a speedy recovery.
Yeah, thanks for that, guys. I'll pass it on.
Say thank you very much for coming on and giving us some time.
No worries. Thanks for listening.
Cheers, Thomas. Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Bye bye.
So there we go. That was Thomas Brown there of Gala Fairydean Rovers, and just talking about the different goings on and over the last few days within the Lowland League board and his resignation. I thought was a really good discussion and probably alluded to a few things that were caught us by surprise. Don't you think, Mozza?
Yeah, I know it wasn't really the tenet of the discussion, but I threw in that question about relegation because obviously it's something the three of us have pushed for pretty heavy. And the fact that it hasn't even came up is, I'm not going to lie, a bit concerning to me.
Yeah, I'm disappointed myself, to be honest with you, Mozza. I agree with you on that position as well. And obviously I know Ben will be as well. So
the thing is, like, we're no stupid, we're no naive. We get the turkeys voting for Christmas analogy, right? I just thought that it made common sense for the league, for the 16 clubs, forget Rangers and Celtic. It made sense for the 16 clubs in any progression going forward to get automatic promotion, because that's the end goal. We want to get the champions going up automatically to get our own house in order at the bottom end. I just think it makes complete common sense. So once we've got that in place, that the Tier 5 champions can come up without needing to worry about playoffs, surely we're in a much better nick to get that automatic relegation for League 2. But yeah, I'm disappointed.
Likewise, I think we've spoken to, for example, George Fraser of the Lowland League board, and he talks about the word ventilation has been used around the leagues, and you hear that now from other clubs. I think I was watching something with Cali Braves the other week, and Ricky Waddle mentioned the word ventilation. It's something that gets used regularly now when it refers to relegation, and it's something that from speaking to George, we did an episode with him a few months ago, wasn't it? And he talked about that, and I from that took that he would be one of the guys there championing that relegation ventilation that he talks about. And to hear from Thomas here that that's not even been discussed at a board level is really, really disappointing. It feels a wee bit like lip service, personally, to the teams below. And I know from ourselves and other clubs in the West, there's a lot of teams that are going for the licence. There's been a lot of licensed clubs in the East, and there's a lot of teams there in the Lowland that are treading water, quite frankly, and really need to open that up. But for the fact that that's not been discussed is pretty disappointing for me. And I thought better of the board personally that at least had been a discussion topic, and perhaps maybe get to a point where maybe we'd get to a vote maybe during the season this year to maybe change it maybe for next season or the season after. But it doesn't sound like that's anywhere near, and that's pretty concerning from a Tier 6 side.
Here's my view on it. I mean, I always believe, just from a sporting point of view, if you're the best team, you win the league, you should be promoted automatically. If you're the worst team at the bottom, you should be relegated. And I said last week, the difference being over the last sort of couple of seasons was the fact that obviously we had coronavirus. Would it be fair to see Vela leave and get relegated due to these sort of factors? I don't think it would have been. But like I said to you last week, Ben, now that we assumably will be playing a full season and there's a chance that they still might not get relegated, I think you sort of look at it and say, well, 3 years for 3 seasons at the bottom. If it will be that case, obviously there's still a few matches to go, but I don't think a lot of people, in all fairness, are giving Vale leaving much hope. But 3 seasons at the bottom, and you still might not get relegated. I mean, it does call into question the sort of competitiveness, or whatever you want to call it, of the league. I think I know a lot of people have different opinions on that, sort of from a different point of view, in terms of the Colts, whether they should be in the league and all that sort of stuff. But you do wonder, certainly, from what you were saying about a tier 6 point of view. What's the point of getting licenses and doing all this to get into the Lowland League if there's you're going to have to? There's only one place up for grabs at the moment. It should certainly be at least 2, I think. Certainly, maybe 3 in the future. 3, but yeah. We've got to be doing better, and like you said, because it's not been discussed, I'm actually feel a wee bit let down, to be honest.
I mean, there's an easy solution staring us in the face this year in the league. Rangers B and Celtic B leave the league at the end of the year. We know they're not going to get voted back in with the way the clubs are thinking. So all you need to do, I spoke to Jamie Shovlin at the South Challenge Cup final from the South of Scotland leagues, and he's pretty convinced that a licensed club's going to win the South this year. So it's simple. You put the commitment now that the West champions, East champions and the South champions all get promoted, and the Lowland swells to 18 teams. Because the concern that most clubs will have is, you're just going to get rid of all these with those 3 coming up automatically. There's an excuse this year like there's no other. You're not going to change the size of the league. It's going to be the same size of fixture list. You're going to bring all 3 champions up. One team, more likely than not, is going to go down in Vale of Leithen. And it just makes sense going forward, because then from that point, you've made a commitment that all 3 champions, if licensed, get promoted, and you relegate as many teams as you need to relegate. And that strikes me as you're giving teams a bit of advance notice. Look, as of next year, you need to be on your game, but we're not throwing it at you last minute. You now know, get yourself prepared. I don't see any better scenario than that. Genuinely, it just seems too common sense.
We've talked about that, and that would be the ideal scenario. But would the SFA approve it? I mean, they've held the rule change so far, so I don't see if once the Colts are out.
I don't see the SFA having an issue with it, because it's tier 5 and 6. It's the issue with the SFA is purely between tiers 4 and 5. So, are they really going to hold back further promotion in terms of spite? Did I see it? They want They want more licensing money. Let's be honest.
Just in terms of the size of the league, though, would that not be an issue? Because obviously it's only a temporary change to 18 for the Colts side.
But if the Highland League is allowed to be 18, why can't the Lowland get that? The Lowland went to 17 and was allowed to go to 17. Technically, the Lowland is allowed to go to 18, but I don't see why the SFA would stop it.
So shouldn't we be pushing this? Shouldn't we be not just us, but shouldn't the clubs be pushing this if they were, if everyone wanted to, a lot of obviously the fairness and whatever, but I'm surprised that's not at least been pushed in terms of more promotion from we were talking about relegation there, but why is more promotion from tier 6 not been asked about either? Would be my question.
I think
it's disappointing.
Yeah, I think the tier 6 teams obviously would want it. I mean, that's a given. But like Mozza mentioned before, it's probably the turkeys voting for Christmas thing, and there's teams at that bottom end of that Lowland League that probably are concerned that they become a tier 6, potentially tier 7 club, depending on how far they fall, and that's probably a concern for them. So the discussion, I guess, is that you look after your own, and the teams at the top will probably likely to vote for it because they probably see the benefit of having that ventilation. I'm going to keep using this word now all day long, but it's the right word to use. And if you can show the League 2 teams or the SPFL that we've got our house in order and we're sorted out, then the teams at the top will be like, well, yeah, let's go for it. But the teams at the bottom half are probably going to say no. Probably not, but we need to do it. I think the whole point in this pyramid is that it's pitched to clubs as a way forward, and progression and all this. You're not going to get much progression out of the West or the East or South if you get one team coming up from the Lowland every season. It's quite frankly, and I think if the Lowland League are not going to do something about it, I want to see something from the SFA, because it's the SFA that are pushing this pyramid and telling us to go and spend all the money to get our grounds in order. I mean, I can't remember how much it's cost at our club, but it's well under 6 figures.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, it's well under 6 figures to get the things in place to do that. And that's the thing that we're doing it because we want to progress as a club, and so do the other teams in the West, and that's what the SFA want. And it does seem like the right thing for Scottish football, but if we have that little kind of, I guess, like as we said, the events are pretty much closed and there's nothing getting through, and that's the thing that they need to sort out. And if it's not going to be the Lowland League, it's got to be the SFA for me.
I mean, the thing that Thomas said that was quite interesting that we might have missed in the kind of the reaction there was the discussion of what kind of the Lowland League would be or what it needs to become. I think there was an implication of potential Lowland League 2 there at one point. He also mentioned regional. So is it meaning Lowland going west and east? That I don't see the SFA agreeing to, because up to this point the SFA has been dead set on, at this tier you need a Highland and a Lowland and there's 2 leagues and that's it. We don't want more than 2 feeder leagues to the SPFL for whatever reason. I still think west and east and north's the way to go, but it is what it is. You'd have thought they'd at least broached it. And from what Thomas is saying, I don't think it's ever came up.
We're talking about Kilwinning getting six figures for the ground upgrades and everything they needed to pay for the licence. Do you know how much clubs get for entry level licence? $4,000. You know, so it's not exactly a lot of money coming back.
$4,000 in Scottish Cup entry.
Scottish Cup entry.
Technically, your Scottish Cup entry, you can go into the prelim round and make
a
few grand, and that's like
basically. Yeah.
If I'm remembering rightly, you split gate receipts as well, don't you? Scottish Cup. So it's not like the old junior ways are you can keep a gate, for example. It's just it's a lot of money to invest for potentially not getting the right reward.
Yeah, it's not worth it in terms of what you're getting back, especially if there's only going to be one place. And the thing is, it's not just your the west of Scotland, for example. It's not just your Auchinleck Talbots, your Clydebanks, your Kilwinnings. There's teams from below that will be in that league next year that'll put up the same fight. I mean, look at probably a team that we've not talked about, but Cambuslang Rangers, for example. Like, look how well they're doing, and think they might again be a decent West of Scotland Premier team next season. But yeah, it's not going to get any easier. The only way it's going to get easier, and the only way we're going to see teams find the level, as people keep saying, is if there are more promotion opportunities or relegation, or more teams getting relegated from the Lowland League as well. But until then, it's just going to be a slow drip. And teams like Kilwinning, I know you're obviously trying to get there with your license, but I mean, if I was spending all this money to do all this and think, well, maybe we have a chance of doing it, it's almost like a lottery, for example. Because you're paying all this for, I'm not sure how much clubs pay for floodlights and stuff like that, but what, you're talking about at least $100,000 or something to get them installed. And you need to get very, very lucky if you get second hand. If you're getting brand new, it's going to cost 6 figures for everything. So it's a hellion investment for a community club, and it is smaller community clubs we're talking about. So there's no big club in non-league that's got 1,000 fans, unless it's a special occasion. It's a lot to ask already for the SFA and the licensing programme, and I get why they've got it, because they want to make sure there's not another Gretna that kind of dies a death when big money backer pulls it. But this is obviously quite an awkward thing for me, because I'm very, very closely linked with Broomhill, and I'm kind of pulling myself away for that slightly just to express personal views here. But it's just like, we've always been dead set on, you're going to use that word again, ventilation in the pyramid, right? How happy were we when we got all the junior teams into the pyramid, and now this summer we've finally got a full pyramid with the North pyramid as well, sorted with the Midlands League and so on. And suddenly we're potentially going to lose the boundary that's going to create issues.
And as much as SFL mentions certain teams in certain regions, there's individual reasons for each of them, and very few of them are further than 5 mile away from a boundary. Brecon were nowhere near the Highland Lowland League boundary. Nowhere near it. And the only reason they wanted to go Lowland is because they recruited players for the Central Belt. It's laziness. It's pure and simple, it's utter laziness. You've made your bed, lie in it, you're a Highland team, and to be fair to them, that's exactly what they've done now. As soon as they realise, look, this is a reality, they've got their head down, and albeit they've lost at the weekend there, they've adjusted well and they've got going. But I get why the SFA want to change it, because they want to bring all the pyramid rules for all a non-league into the same kind of pattern. So between tiers 5 and 6, all the leagues need to agree, and if a team wants to go to another league, they can say so and it can go to arbitration. They want the same for a League 2 team coming down, essentially. But if they know at the start of the season, and it's a set boundary for a reason, to keep the integrity of the pyramid, why does that need changed?
I don't like the whole idea of this pick and choose nonsense. It really is like, it's really bizarre. It's like a relegated West of Scotland Premier team saying, "Oh, well, we want to be in Conference B because we have more of a chance of winning that one." Or it doesn't make any sense to me. Or it does make sense. It does make sense, I should say, but it's not right in my point.
But the scenario's there. If say Brecon had gone to the Lowland and they got relegated, they wouldn't go to the Midland League, which they should do. Where would they go? The East of Scotland would say, "No, get to. We didn't want you. You're not part of our boundaries." Like the West are hardly going to take Brecon. It's just it's frustrating, is what it is. We're arguing over things that should be common sense.
The thing is, surely for like a team like Brecon, no disrespect to the Highland League, that's got to be an easier league to win than the Lowland League, given the teams that are already in there, plus the efforts you'll have with travelling and such like for your home and away games. It's one of those, if you've got a team based in Glasgow, for example, you're still going to have to travel to Brecon to play your games every Saturday or when you're at home, and then obviously again travelling at the away games. But the Lowland League is a harder league, let's be honest. So I don't know why they were so desperate. I get it from a recruitment point of view, sure.
I think it's purely player recruitment.
But
I'm quickly just looking at League 2 now for locations of clubs and so on, because they're saying that they'd want this to come in immediately, right? As far as I can tell, it's only Elgin and Forfar.
Yeah, that sounds right.
That would be Highland. Every other team's a Lowland team. But what's to stop Forfar then saying, "No, we want to enter the Lowland League"? And
imagine that, like being a team in the Central Belt having to travel to Forfar to play.
And I kind of get why the Highland would be approved for it, because they'd think, "Oh, we don't need to worry about another Angus team."
The problem, Forfar's an interesting one, but I can't imagine they would be near the bottom anyway. But like the madness of, say, an Elgin, a team that's kind of well respected. I think they loan a lot of the players to the Highland League. Imagine they came to the Lowland League, it would just be mad.
Like common sense would say they wouldn't say the Lowlands League. Yeah. They've got their ties in Highland League, XYZ, but it's the fact they could is the issue.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even, like an Albion Rovers going to play in the Highland League, that would just be mental, eh? And considering their manager doesn't usually like his long trips, we've heard, so.
But I mean, go 5-10 years in the future. The Lowland League now has Auchinleck Talbot, Kilwinning Rangers, Linlithgow Rose, Darvel, throw in whoever you want, the big kind of tier 6, tier 5 sides, are now tier 5 sides, right? And you get a team, say, I don't know, Stirling, get relegated that year, and they think, let's go to the Highland League. Easier to get back up. We're going to guarantee ourselves a playoff if we build our squad right. Sod playing all those teams in the Lowland. It's just, it totally compromises integrity of the league system.
I know we're talking hypotheticals here, right? But imagine this thing is right. If 3 Rovers got promoted to the Lowland League, right, and then fucking Forfar come down, and 3 have to travel to Forfar in a game, it'd be mad. It'd just be, that's how farcical the whole thing is. When you start putting things together, it just becomes absolutely ridiculous that the idea that could possibly happen because the rule changes there. I don't understand though. Like, I get that if the SFA want the rule changes for the playoffs to be uniform and all that, that's fine. But I don't get why that has to be so lined up with the boundary. I don't understand that at all. And
But that was the other point I brought up. Why does the boundary not stay but bring in an arbitration process? So at least there's a vehicle for a club to say, if we're right on the boundary, look, we'd be better suited to the other side because XYZ, historical reasons, rivalries, and like fan base coming for that side. There's ways and means of doing that, and the SFA can hold the arbitration.
Yeah.
But it is, like, as we're kind of going back to what Thomas said there, it's give and not take. They're trying to bring this in and they're not saying, but you'll get this in return. And that's been the issue the whole time. That's why the Lowland sides have felt disrespected, because constantly it's a barrage of do this, and they keep going, no, get it.
The thing that I can kind of understand Brecon, as much as I disagreed with them trying to push themselves into the Lowland League. I can kind of understand that, but I just don't know where this. For me, it's common sense now that maybe Brecon were kind of borderline, although they weren't. But I just can't imagine a Forfar or an Elgin City, or even like a Cowdenbeath saying they want to play in the Highland League. So I just don't understand why they're pushing this now. It just seems very strange, and it, I'm not one for conspiracy theories, but there's got to be some other motive to why they want this done that we're just not seeing, or it's not being discussed by anyone, because it's so strange and lacks common sense that it's almost unbelievable.
I mean, common sense and SFA don't always go hand in hand, let's be fair. At this point, they've been trying this for years, and it feels like they're just going to keep going until they try and get their own way, doesn't it? Like, they've not adjusted to the new reality, which is that pyramid boundary has been set by what's happened this summer. It's been set in stone with the Midlands League. Yep. So, I'm just exasperated with the whole thing. Like, we had an idea when we started getting kind of feedback from people on what was going on, that this was here again, but it's just, why aren't we spending our time on far more constructive matters? Why is this coming back up again? Like they are going to withdraw Rangers and Celtic B-sides for Lowland. That is the hollowest threat that I have ever heard in my life, and I quite like the fact that Thomas said, well, let's call their bluff, let's pull them out ourselves and make them go to the SFA to get it sorted. I actually think that would have worked, to be honest, but I'm all for that. Like, play them at their own game. If they're going to mess about with us.
That's one of the things that I thought was almost unbelievable, because obviously the SFA, we've heard obviously Rangers and Celtic goes up with them previously, but that was like, could you imagine the scandal? Like, and what would be said, all right, it's like what I said about backlash. Obviously, we had our own sort of personal backlash for it as well. But, it would almost feel like it was all for nothing. It's like, all right, so the Colts played, 6, 7, 8 games or whatever in the Lowland League, now they're out. It's just like, well, what was the point in that? It would be another, with a long line of embarrassments for Scottish football. I just don't see them. I don't know why that was brought up, but I just never saw it as a valid threat. It was almost to the point of like, yeah, I just don't believe that because it's so ridiculous,
I mean, it probably is potentially one way for the SFA to be seen as some sort of heroes, because also there's been a lot of resistance to the Colt teams from the fan bases. Probably, let's be honest, above the Lowland League. I haven't seen a lot from Lowland League fans that are really that concerned. It's probably, as I say, above and below. Probably the West teams and the East teams are probably in the South, obviously, as well, feeling a wee bit aggrieved that kind of teams have jumped to the queue, if you like, and I can see where that argument comes from. And obviously, the teams, we've seen a lot from teams above in League One and League Two that have basically no skin in the game in terms of the Lowland League, and it seems like they've got a lot to say about that situation. So it would be one play for the SFA to be seen as potentially the heroes, but I mean, it does mean taking on Rangers and Celtic, which is something they've never done in the past. So I don't expect them to die on that hill with regards to taking on the Old Firm. So I think. I mean,
if they do, give us a ringside seat with some popcorn. But
I totally. I mean, it'd be some watch. But I think that one of the things that Thomas brought up there was about the fact that those rules haven't actually been rubber stamped and basically the league is playing kind of without an agreed rule set at the moment, which is a wee bit worrying because obviously what we mentioned as well in that conversation about the potential kind of ramifications perhaps for a legal challenge from either League Two or from the bottom club within the Lowland League, because if you turn around and say, well, we played without the rules, and that I personally feel like that probably has a bit more water to stand up in some sort of court than some of the other things that have went to court in the last few years, and that's worrying. I think if you're in the Lowland League right now, that potentially that door to the SPFL can get closed for the season because you're not agreeing that rule, and that's obviously going back to the ventilation point of relegation and promotion, etc. That's possibly a situation where that can be turned around on you and stop that promotion actually taking place.
Yeah, I don't have to worry with the promotion playoff rules because, as you said, all individual parties need to agree to changes before they come in. So the default would be they've not changed it, so we go with what was already there till the Lowland get on board. The issue I've got is the SFA not approving the Lowland's initial changes in articles to allow guest clubs, which are what the B-sides are. Because essentially what could happen, there is a situation where this could go to a legal challenge. Say if it's between two sides right at the top of the Lowland and it's within a win, so say there's 2 points between it, if they go, oh, those rules changes were never coming in, so basically expunge all the results against the B-side, suddenly you've got a different champion club. That could happen. That is a thing that could happen, and then God help us with that. We saw what happened with Bonnyrigg not getting the chance to go up and Kelty getting the approval previously, so it's just a mess. It didn't need to be a mess, and it's a mess.
The thing about the legal challenges, obviously, we've already had our fair share of legal challenges, obviously, at the end of last season with the SPFL and Brecon in the playoffs and stuff like that, which were thrown out. I guess I would be more concerned. I guess it is concerning, but surely if they had the meetings and SFA were saying, oh, yeah, that's fine, we'll approve that and withheld it, then, yeah, I don't see how far that could go, you know. You could just stand up and say, well, they approved it. I've got 12 witnesses or whoever, and they just never give it to us. So how in any way, shape or form is that the Lowland League's fault? You know what I mean? That would be the argument, in my opinion.
You'd assume that they've got emails.
Yeah,
basically saying, that's fine, we'll approve that, we'll rubber stamp that. And I think that would take care of it. But it's the fact that we've got to this point, and it's, say the old stereotype about murky background dealings and email chains, and just for once, just going to do what you say you're going to do. That's all we ask. Maybe we're asking too much. But again, an SFA change doesn't go through because they want to try and get something back.
Do a Dundee and have missing emails, have emails go missing and whatnot. I never received that.
The Lowland vote did change, apparently. The board vote did change, so...
How does that work? I mean, that's the thing that we don't obviously know the ins and outs of what was going on, but
he said it was because of an email, didn't he? He said an email came in, I'm assuming, for Ian Maxwell or somebody at the SFA, and suddenly the vote changed for yes to no.
Yeah, so it's obviously something we said in that conversation that's but I guess what was being said, we'll never know that. But no. I think the thing about this is going back to the point about adult conversations. I think quite rarely we need to have an adult conversation about the relegation at the bottom of the Lowland. We need to have an adult conversation about the promotion in League Two from Tier 5, and if that means maybe doing that with the boundary changes and things like that, then maybe that's a conversation to be had. But I think this is, like you said, it's the SFA just looking to take rather than kind of give something back, and the SPFL clubs won't particularly want to have this automatic promotion, automatic relegation in place. Let's be honest, it's the same scenario as the bottom of the Lowland, as the turkeys vote for Christmas all over again, and that's the thing that they'll keep seeing, and they obviously, we could probably go on to the cult teams and what their aspirations are, and they want to go into the League Two and things. I think that's the thing, their ultimate aim, isn't it? And that's not going to happen without a bit more kind of discussion, and it doesn't sound like League Two really want that to happen, and the SPFL rather. So I think I think adult discussions need to be taking place at different levels and try and sort this mess out, because it's just an absolute farce.
If the SPFL want this change, they need to firstly represent themselves and stop hiding behind the SFA as the arbiters. And secondly, they need to offer something in return, because they keep angling for this change and just expecting it to happen. And the only thing they're offering in return is threats. We're going to pull you out of cup competitions. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. As Thomas said, even if it's, say, in 2 or 3 years, we'll bring automatic relegation on. You still have your playoff between Highland and Lowland, but the winner of that goes up. A simple change like that, you show a bit of respect, probably gets voted through. Like, it's not an ideal proposal. We've talked about what we think about the boundary, but if you're going to offer something that's tangible in return, that's for the good of the member clubs of the league and all the non-league, they'll probably say aye. But
the worst thing they could have done is have a person on each of the boards or been involved with both. Obviously, Neil Doncaster having been a part of the SPFL and the SFA. I think that's just stupid. I mean, in reality, it might work if he's kind of taking interest here and there, but it's not great having two organisations with one guy representing both of them. It's just like there's surely got to be a conflict of interest there. But surely, going back to why Tam resigned, like I said, I must admit I agree with him. I don't understand the reasoning why the clubs weren't informed of what was going on. It's something I can't agree with. I remember George saying about the Colts decision where the clubs and people weren't informed because of this, that. I can understand that, but I just can't understand the reason behind not informing the clubs of this. I don't see why it would have been. Why would it have been hidden in the first place? It's trying to figure out. There's obviously reasons, but it's just trying to figure out what the reasons were behind that.
Well, they were going to vote in a week later, so they were going to find out.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand, because surely if it's better to go into a meeting and say, oh, this vote's going to happen. Oh, we already knew about this. Oh, this is how we're going to vote. I just don't. On the issue of the boundary, I don't. The clubs voted 17-0 for last time, so not telling them is not going to change that going into this meeting. So it's strange. It really. The
only thing I can think of is that they were scared stuff would leak out, but it got to the press anyway. Yeah. So I don't know. It's
a strange one. It really is strange. It's not something I can agree with, to be honest with you. And I'm on the side of Chris and Thomas there, because at the end of the day, no one's responsible. We're not, they're not responsible to us, or the clubs aren't responsible to us or anyone. But you are responsible for your member clubs in any organisation.
They've obviously decided there's a reason to withhold that information for a week. And whether we find out what that is or not, who knows, but we probably won't be privy to that. But yeah, surely it looks worse if it comes out in the media and then has to get explained by emails or so on that stories came in, it's not 100% true, but this is the case, but we weren't going to tell you. But we were, but then we weren't.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's not clean.
Where do you think then that leaves the Lowland League board then? Obviously, we've seen two guys resign over the last week over this obviously situation. Does there need to be change at the Lowland League board level?
Chris Ewens was certainly for it for the statements he's put out. He said that he's willing to get back involved in the right circumstances, which tells me that this isn't the right circumstance, but he'd come back if things changed. So I don't know. I'll be honest. We'll need to wait and see what clubs are saying. Thomas mentioned he's hired for quite a few clubs, so it comes down to a majority vote if they want to change things, doesn't it? So, are there 9-member clubs that would want to totally change the board? We'll need to wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of talked about this. We had heard certain things throughout the week, and it was as I said, I was quite torn about. Because I almost felt like it maybe I got to that point and you would be on one side of the fence or the other. And I don't know how it's going to go. I don't personally see it, see anything happening because of this. But I do agree with I do agree on the issue of not telling the clubs. Obviously, that I think they should have been told, whatever the circumstances are reason. And we're already said that I'm not sure why that would be withheld. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard to say. It's like what I said to Thomas. We maybe know 5 things, but we're unaware of 10 when it comes to the league board and things higher up. So
there's no point in us speculating on changes in the league board because it would be wild speculation. We don't know enough to say what's going to happen next. We'll just need to sit like everyone else and keep an eye on it.
That probably rounds up the discussion that we've had. Us having a good chat about what's been going on. But there has obviously been football this week, and the Lowland League. We always find that we revert back to talking about bureaucracy and red tape and votes and statements and all that shenanigans that comes along with Scottish football. But I mean, there was football, so let's just have a quick look at the games and the fixtures. This was a 3-2 victory for East Kilbride against Berwick Rangers at Shielfield Park. East Kilbride back to winning ways this week.
Yeah, it was a close one. Obviously, East Kilbride, we've mentioned obviously they've had injuries, but it looked like they had a few guys returning. Obviously, Al Vittoria. Craig Malcolm obviously scored his 50th Lowland League goal. He's been a bit of a talisman for them over the years. I think Berwick will be a wee bit disappointed because they've had guys like Graham Taylor that have played well and Scott Taylor Mackenzie, but I think they conceded it obviously the wrong times just before half time and they left it a wee bit late to get back into the match. But yeah, decent win away for East Kilbride.
I think I'd say this was going to be a draw, and it seemed pretty tight. But how many times over the last few years have we sat here and said Craig Malcolm was a difference in an East Kilbride game and in an R01? So they needed it, and they got it in the end. Still think Berwick's been pretty decent though to start the season. I expect him to keep doing all right.
They also East Kilbride also bringing in Jamie Finlay, because we spoke about him last week, coming in from Rossvale, seems to have hit the ground running in terms of UK. Had two goals in 2 games, and coming up from a team like Rossvale, that probably at the bottom end of the West, and certainly looks like he's doing his bit there for East Kilbride. So good to see that. I think he's a decent player, and he's obviously found his level at UK. Next game then, Bonnyrigg defeated Bo'ness United 2-1 at Newton Park. Bonnyrigg just keep on rolling.
Yeah, again, it's another tight game. There's a few tight games at the weekend, but Rose just seem to be getting the 3 points at the minute. And shock horror, there was another set piece involved here as well. You can't give them free kicks around the box. You just can't get away with it. I'm a wee bit worried about Bo'ness because they're a team that they made quite a few changes and they fancied their chances of challenging for the league. Make no mistake about that, but they've started really slowly. For reading what the fans have been saying, they're just feeling a wee bit disillusioned now. Things aren't falling for them. But Xander Miller still getting the goals. I noticed it was a penalty, Bo'ness's goal they scored. But at the minute, Rose are right up there as one of the favourites to challenge for the promotion playoff, and I think Bo'ness are already at the point where they've probably left themselves too much to do.
A penalty in a Bo'ness game, a Bonnyrigg game. There's a shock. It wasn't a penalty Bonnyrigg. That's the biggest shock.
The graphic never came out.
They had it's a brilliant result for Bonnyrigg on the road, to be honest. But I agree what you're saying about Bo'ness. I think Bo'ness are. I think they were kind of similar to Bonnyrigg in a sense that they did have, sort of mainstays in that team. A few of them retired before the season began. A few others left, for example. So I think the team's actually, albeit it's a decent team, they're still trying to gel together. And they've not had easy fixtures. I actually personally think they're missing Michael Gemmell, who I believe is injured. They're missing a centre mid just to sort of control things, to sort of, I guess, control the tempo. I think that's all that was missing from Bo'ness. And results, against tougher teams, you kind of expect it from, to these sort of games to go either way. And I just don't think, I think we mentioned it last week as well, Ben, but I don't think Bo'ness have actually had much luck when it comes to games this season either. So when you've got the fact that the players needing time to gel, luck's not going your way and you're up against equally tough teams, then yeah, it's not a recipe for success at the moment for Bowness.
It's over then Alliance Park at Cali Braves 4, Vale leading 0. More misery for Vale. Good result, I guess, for Cali Braves to put 4 past Vale.
Yeah, it's kind of what we expected, to be honest. I don't think in fairness, I think we've not given Vale even much hope in many of the games. They have got a new manager, obviously, Alec Monroe, the former goalkeeping coach. I think Guy Kerr, who's came in, is also I don't know if they're joint management, but I know that'll be their management team for the rest of the season. They've lost a few players. I noticed the striker they brought in from America. I think he was trialling for East Stirlingshire against Spartans. So it's difficult. It's going to be difficult. But fair enough to Cali Braves. It was a really decent result. That Reece Armstrong certainly looks like a massive standout for them from what I've seen so far.
Yeah, don't really have too much to add. The Braves have looked pretty good this season, and I think they might have caught most people on the hop. We expected them to be solid, but I don't think we expected them to be as good as they have been.
Alright, this next match was involving Celtic B and Dalbeattie Stars. A 1-0 win for Celtic B at the Pennycar Stadium. Seems like quite a tight game for Celtic B.
Yeah, it was a cracking goal that Celtic scored. Good pressure for Star. They had the ball at the back, recycled the play all the way around, and it was a full team move. Eventually, a ball across the 6-yard line ended up with a tap in. But by all accounts, Star were very unlucky not to take something for this. They played really well, as they have played all season, and they made them work bloody hard for the result. Although they had a chance towards the end, it could have been 2-0. But I need to give credit to Star for the way they put in a performance, and they'll be upset not to get something.
Yeah, all three of their losses have been quite narrow. One thing we've not really focused on, obviously we've gave Russell Curry a lot of praise and the guys like Dan Orsay and Lewis Sloan, but I think they've really improved defensively as well. Scott Phillips, that's came in from Stranraer Reserves, he was probably one of the better defenders in the south of Scotland. Jack Dickinson, who was at Gretna, I think last season or the season before, and Lewis Dunn, they look really, really solid at the back as well as sort of in the midfield and going forward. So that's why we're not seeing them, lose heavily so far, because they actually overall as a package look solid. And I think Lee Wells, the captain's been playing at the back also, I've heard. So yeah, they'll not be happy to be losing on a game, but coming up against Celtic B, who we've kind of discussed in terms of the quality of the Colts sides and the fact that they have a lot more players available to them than other Lowland League teams, it's always going to be tough,
The boy Owen Moffat sounds like a player. He seems like he's going to be very potential in that Celtic system, and seems like he's involved every week in terms of the action. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see obviously how he develops and keep an eye on him for sure. Alright, next game then, Civil Service Strolls 4, Cumbernauld Colts 2 at Christie Gillis Park. 3 goals in the first 10 minutes of the game, Chris?
Yeah, delighted for Big Alou Faye. He's the strangest big man player I've ever seen. He can play in centre mid, he can play forward. I've seen him play like as a winger, but he's the type of guy that always sort of has the right attitude. It's like he just seems to enjoy his football, no matter what he's been told by Gary, like, you play wherever, mate, and he does it. And I'm absolutely delighted that he's got his hat-trick. Disappointing for Colts. They've really been struggling since the start of the season. They've had some tough games, but there have been fixtures that I would expect them to do a wee bit better in. But blown away by a Stroller side where, let's face it, I don't think anyone predicted that they'd be right up there at the start of the season. But Gary, I think if I was to say his formation, it'd probably be a 3-6-1. It's strange. I mean, he plays with these wing backs, and it's like it's either a 3-6-1 or a 5-4-1, or I've seen a sort of 5-3-1-1 sort of thing. It's really strange, but yeah, we have to give him credit for his tactical prowess. Always
as strange as he wants if they keep winning.
Yeah, always seems to be I don't know. They always seem to be really sort of structured and hard to break down, and they obviously can get goals as well. So yeah, they're in fantastic form to begin with, and I wasn't really expecting them to be blowing teams away like they have been as well.
Yeah, I think they've not really added that many players either, Civil. So the fact that Gary's getting this kind of tune out of them is a fantastic job for him, but we were guilty quite often before giving Gary all the credit, and the players called us out on it before when we go back. So we need to give the players the credit as well, because the performances, they're just so consistent, and they deserve to be right up there challenging the Strollers. So hopefully, to keep the league interesting, they can keep it going, and hopefully Star can keep it going. All these sides that have started well, and we'll see how it all shakes out.
Next game then, Rangers were away to Edinburgh United. It was a 3-0 win. Not quite probably the onslaught of goals that we probably would expect, and the ones that you've probably seen a lot of headlines for if Rangers had maybe been out there and scored 7 or 8. So a good result again for Rangers B. Keep winning. They're looking decent side. They've got decent talent, I think, in that side, but unfortunate again for Edinburgh United.
Yeah, it's always going to be a tough game for them. In fairness, I think Dorian set them up to be very defensive and hard to break down, so he kind of embraced that side of things, knowing it was going to be a tough afternoon. They've done well to keep the score down. Like, ultimately, it was 1-0 all the way through till 25 minutes left in the clock, and they were still right in that game. But the young Rangers players managed to see it out. And I still think Rangers are a step ahead of Celtic in terms of the two B sides.
Yeah.
And they'll be happy enough, I'd imagine, with a 3-0 win, plenty to work on.
Next game then, the Spartans 2, East Stirlingshire 3 at Ainsley Park. A win for Shire there on the road.
Yeah, it was a strange start to the game. I actually missed sort of what happened, but right at the start of the game, Shire had a corner, and I think Kevin Turner may have put a knee to or something. I missed it, but obviously there is photographic evidence out there from Spartans. But yeah, Blair Carswell was down for a brief period right at the start of the game. Shire were fantastic, actually. I must admit, I was very surprised at how good they were. Spartans, on the other hand, weren't that great up until the sort of last sort of 10-15 minutes of the game. It was very strange, considering how well Spartans have. There was a red card, obviously. Bolo, I actually thought it was quite soft to begin with. That would be my initial reaction. But knowing Bolo and what he's like around referees, he literally just elbowed the boy in a Spartans corner, and knowing what he's like, his reaction, he obviously didn't have much to say to the referee. So I'm assuming it was a straight red card, well deserved for him. Silly stuff. But to be honest, even before the red card, I think Shire were really decent, well deserving of their lead. It wasn't until, I think, as I mentioned, sort of later in the game, where they kind of sort of switched off. Jamie Dishington obviously doing damage. Dean Watson, I think, scored one of the best individual goals I've ever seen in the Lowland League. It was that good. He literally just went on a run down the left-hand side, cut inside, took on the 2 or 3 Spartans players, slotted home. It was fantastic. And we know Dean Watson, obviously, where he's dancing into the box from Shire. But I say that because Jamie Dishington, for Spartans' first goals, it was almost like a carbon copy of Dean Watson's. So 2 fantastic individual goals from Dean Watson and Jamie Dishington. But the stoppage time at the end of the game, I think the referee was a wee bit. I actually, at one point, thought he might have wanted Spartans to get back into it. I think it was 10 minutes additional time or something. It was something stupid. But yeah, Spartans, they just ran out of time. It was going to be tough with 10 men, but for the majority of the game, Stirlingshire were fantastic and thoroughly deserved their victory.
Of course, Jamie Dishington had to score. Of course, he had to score. That's my main takeaway for that. But no, it's good to hear Shire played well. Obviously, we thought they might find it a wee bit tougher this year, but they're doing quite decent things with the squad they've got. So keeps it interesting. There are always good games between them and Spartans, aren't there? They're always quite tight affairs. So sounds like it was more of the same.
The final game then was involving Liddy's favourite franchise club, Broomhill. They were playing at Gretna 2008, and it was a 2-1 victory for Broomhill, and goals for assistant manager Mick Dunlop and manager David Gormley. Am I hearing that right, was it?
If you want a job done properly, do it yourself, was the mantra. Apparently, like, I wasn't at the game, I wasn't able to get down because I had some car issues, but from what the gaffer was saying, first half's the worst we played all season. It was raging to the point that he said he's never been so angry in a dressing room, and he actually had to go away and have a walk away after the leathering he gave the players at half time to let the blood pressure go down a bit. It's just as well because he ended up bringing himself on. But yeah, two things changed the game. Big Mick Dunlop scored an hour mark to get us back in the party when we'd had one or two chances that it might have just felt like it wasn't going to be our day. And then you might have seen on Twitter, because the club account shared that Owen Stott made just one of the best saves I've seen for a keeper at this level. It was proper header down kind of in the middle of the goal, and he got down to it and put it up onto the bar. Just an outstanding save. Because if Gretna scored that, they win the game, I think. So the gaffer brought himself on. He says he squeezed into medium shorts. I highly doubt they were medium. I'm pretty sure they were XLs. But he did the business, showed great composure. Unfortunately for the Gretna keeper, he's been foxed by the fact he went through the legs of the defender who was right in front of him. And it's 3 points. We needed it. We badly needed it with the run of games we've got coming up. So we would have taken it however it came, and so it was.
The only thing I would add to that, obviously Gretna's opening game at Raydale, it's not the result they wanted, obviously, but I'd like to know sort of trivia between when was the last time an assistant manager and manager scored for a club. That would be interesting.
It's a good quiz question, isn't it? If somebody knows, let us know. When was the last time that the management team were the only scorers in a win for a football club in Scotland?
Must be rare. But it must be a proper rare stat.
It must have happened before. There must have been a player manager that's got a couple of goals at some point.
How do we have any report on how Gorms played in the game? Was he involved, or was he obviously scored? But was he?
In Gorms' own words, his knee's away and he's finished, but he still managed to get a goal. So,
I mean, what does that say for the rest of the bench? If the decision is, do you know what? None of these guys will do. I'll bring myself on, who hasn't played for maybe 4 or 5 years, maybe. I don't know how long.
He brought himself on midweek and it didn't really work. But when he brought himself on against Gretna, I think it was more a case of he just wanted to be in the ears of the younger lads and kind of encourage them on, tell them where to go, but being on the pitch rather than on the sidelines. So I don't think he expected to be a man that scored, put it that way. He was thinking he'd be more of a set-up role, but hey, he still got it.
Aye, obviously it worked, man. Tactical genius, bring yourself on, score the winner, and boom.
I think his exact quote was, "I'm still miles off it."
Fair play. Just if anyone wants to get in touch, find me on Twitter at Mr. Ben Grant. It's up there somewhere. If you're watching on video format, there it is. I'll get the point right one day. Mozza, where can we find you if you want to watch that BSC game and all the other good stuff that you do?
Twitch.tv/ that way. Oh god. Pro streamer, can't get it. Mozza. And obviously at Mozza Plays on Twitter, 2 Z's in the Mozza. On yourself, Chris?
At Rampant FM. Are you only Mozza on Twitch now?
I am. I'm a big partner these days.
Big time Charlie.
Big purple tick partner on Twitch.
I should have noticed that, by the way.
I was going to say the ultimate self-promo every week.
Shows you how much I go on Twitch. I'll have to go on later because obviously our NFL draft, but yeah.
I am the smallest partner on Twitch, to be fair. So
it's good enough for you, sir. It's good enough for you. And obviously, just where do we get the catch up, Chris? If anybody wants to find
of course, yeah. The one thing we're talking about at official Catchup on Twitter, Lowland League Catchup on Facebook, and pretty much Google official Catchup or Lowland League Catchup, and you'll get us everywhere else. Everywhere, even places that I've never heard of. It's true, by the way.
Obviously, a thanks to our sponsors, the Soccer Shop Direct. Find them on Twitter at the Soccer Shop D. Check out their website www.thesoccershopdirect.com for all your teamwear and football equipment needs. Well, that's another exciting episode. I'm sure there's plenty to talk about, and I'm sure we'll see some of this chat around the social media and other good internet forums, I'm sure, at some point over the next few days.
Some very questionable ones as well as good ones as well, obviously.
Obviously. But thanks for watching and listening, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.
Catches.